I found out my mother stole my inheritance on a Tuesday morning in March, sitting in a lawyer's office that smelled like old leather and broken promises. The attorney, Mr. Richardson, kept clearing his throat and shuffling papers like he was afraid to look me in the eye. I should have known something was wrong when Mom insisted on coming with me to the reading of Grandma Rose's will. She kept fidgeting with her purse strap and wouldn't meet my gaze. "Grace," Mr. Richardson finally said, "I'm afraid there's been a change to your grandmother's will." My stomach dropped. I'd been counting on that inheritance for months. David and I had already put a deposit down on the house we wanted to buy. We'd been saving for years, but it wasn't enough. Not in this market. Grandma Rose had always promised me her house and savings would come to me. She'd said it 100 times. "You're my girl, Gracie. You'll be taken care of." "What kind of change?" I asked, even though I could already feel the ground shifting under me. "The will was updated 3 months ago. The primary beneficiary is now." He glanced at my mother, then back at his papers. "Your cousin Rebecca." The words hit me like ice water. Rebecca. My cousin who lived in California, who barely called Grandma Rose except when she needed money. Rebecca who hadn't visited in 2 years before Grandma died. Rebecca who'd never even liked the old Victorian house on Maple Street because it was too old-fashioned and needed too much work. "That's impossible," I said. "Grandma would never do that." Mom finally spoke up. "Gracie, maybe we should discuss this at home." But I wasn't looking at her. I was staring at Mr. Richardson, waiting for him to tell me this was some kind of mistake. Instead, he pulled out a document with Grandma's shaky signature at the bottom. The date was clear. December 15th, just 3 months before she died. "I don't understand," I whispered. She was getting confused near the end. "The doctor said she was having memory issues." "The will was properly witnessed," Mr. Richardson said gently. "I can assure you it's legally binding." I felt like I was drowning. How could this be happening? I'd spent every weekend with Grandma Rose for the last 5 years. When she got sick, I was the one who moved her doctor appointments around my work schedule. I was the one who drove her to physical therapy and made sure she took her medications. I was the one who organized her pill boxes every Sunday and called to remind her to take them. I was the one who sat with her during chemotherapy sessions when the cancer came back. I was the one who held her hand when she died. The inheritance wasn't even really about the money, not at first. It was about knowing that all those years of care meant something to her. It was about feeling valued and loved and remembered. But sitting in that lawyer's office, watching my mother stare at her hands, I realized that maybe none of it had mattered after all. Mom was quiet on the drive home. Too quiet. When we got to her house, she made coffee with shaking hands, and that's when I knew something was really wrong. "You knew," I said. It wasn't a question. She set down the coffee pot harder than necessary. "Gracie, you don't understand the whole situation." "Then explain it to me." She sat down across from me at her kitchen table, the same table where I'd done homework as a kid, where we'd had countless conversations over the years. But this felt different. She looked older somehow and guilty. "Rebecca needed the money more than you do," she said finally. "She's a single mother. She's struggling. So am I. David and I have been trying to buy a house for 3 years. You know this. You have David. You have 2 incomes. Rebecca only has herself." I stared at her. "Mom, are you telling me you convinced Grandma to change her will?" "I didn't convince her of anything. I just helped her see that Rebecca might need the help more." The way she said it, so careful and measured, made my blood run cold. "What did you do?" I took her to see Mr. Richardson. She was having one of her good days, and we talked about how family should take care of family. Rebecca isn't even close to our family. She calls maybe twice a year. She's still blood, Gracie, and she has children to think about. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her and ask her how she could do this to me. Instead, I just sat there, feeling like everything I thought I knew about my mother was crumbling. This was the woman who'd raised me after my father died when I was 12. This was the woman who'd taught me to be strong and independent. This was the woman I'd trusted with my deepest secrets and biggest dreams. "Did Rebecca ask you to do this?" I asked. Mom's face told me everything. She looked away, fidgeting with her wedding ring. She mentioned she was having financial troubles when she called after Grandma's funeral. After? She called after the funeral. She couldn't get time off work to come. That was a lie, and we both knew it. Rebecca worked as a freelance graphic designer. She could have made time if she'd wanted to. But she hadn't wanted to. She'd never wanted to deal with Grandma Rose when she was alive, but she was happy enough to take her money when she was dead. I remembered the last family gathering where Rebecca had shown up, 2 Christmases ago. She'd spent the whole time on her phone, barely talking to Grandma Rose except to complain about the food being too salty or the house being too cold. When Grandma had tried to show her old photo albums, Rebecca had rolled her eyes and said she needed to make some calls for work. But somehow, she was the one who deserved the inheritance. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked. "It wasn't planned, Grace. It just happened." "When? When did you take her to change the will?" Mom sighed, and I could see her calculating whether to lie to me again. "December 10th. 5 days before the date on the will. 5 days before what turned out to be one of Grandma's last clear periods before the dementia really took hold. My mother had timed it perfectly." "She asked about you," Mom said quietly. "She wanted to make sure you'd be okay." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her you were strong, that you'd figure things out." There it was. The reason I'd been sacrificed for Rebecca. Because I was strong. Because I'd always figured things out. Because I'd never called my mother crying about money troubles or relationship problems or how hard life was as a single parent. Because I'd been the good daughter who handled things quietly and didn't make a fuss. Over the next few weeks, I tried to process what had happened. I kept thinking there had to be some mistake, some way to fix this. I researched elder law and cognitive capacity, and whether wills could be challenged when someone had dementia. But every lawyer I spoke to said the same thing. If the will was properly witnessed and the person seemed competent at the time of signing, it would be very difficult to contest. I called Rebecca myself, thinking maybe she'd do the right thing and share the inheritance. Maybe she didn't even know about Grandma's original will. "Oh, Grace," she said when I explained the situation. "I'm so sorry you're upset about this. But Grandma Rose was very clear about what she wanted. She wanted to leave everything to me, Rebecca. She told me so many times. Well, people change their minds. Maybe she realized I needed it more." The casual way she said it made me sick. Like my years of caring for Grandma meant nothing. Like the woman who raised me after my father died hadn't specifically told me I'd inherit the house where I'd spent so many happy childhood summers. "The house is worth almost $400,000, I said. "That's life-changing money. If you could just—" "I can't afford to share right now," Rebecca interrupted. "The kids need so much, and I want to put some away for their college funds. You understand." I hung up, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. What made it worse was discovering just how much Rebecca knew about the original will. When I called her again a few days later, she let slip that Mom had told her all about Grandma's promises to me. "I mean, I felt bad about it," Rebecca said. "But Aunt Patricia explained how you and David have good jobs and don't have kids to worry about. She said you'd be fine." Aunt Patricia. My mother. Discussing my financial situation with my cousin like I was a charity case they needed to evaluate. Deciding between them what I could and couldn't handle losing. That's when I realized this wasn't just about Rebecca needing money. This was about my mother having a favorite, and it wasn't me. Rebecca had always been the golden child in our extended family. She was the artistic one, the free spirit, the one who needed rescuing. I was the responsible one, the one who had her life together, the one who didn't need help. Except I did need help. I'd always needed help. I just hadn't asked for it the way Rebecca did. David tried to be supportive, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes when I told him we'd have to keep renting. We'd been so close to having our own place, somewhere we could start a family. We'd already picked out paint colors and furniture layouts. We'd talked about which room would be the nursery someday. Now that dream felt impossibly far away. The worst part was how it changed things with my mother. Every conversation felt strained. Every time she tried to act normal, I remembered what she'd done. She'd taken my future and given it away without even asking me. She'd betrayed not just me, but Grandma Rose's original wishes. I started avoiding family gatherings. When Mom asked why I wasn't coming to Sunday dinners anymore, I told her I was busy with work. When she invited us for holidays, I made excuses. David didn't understand at first why I was being so cold to her. "She's still your mother," he said one night after I'd declined another dinner invitation. "Is she?" I asked. "Because a real mother wouldn't have done what she did." Maybe she thought she was doing the right thing. The right thing for who? Certainly not for me. I stopped visiting as much. When she asked why, I told her I was busy with work, but we both knew that wasn't the real reason. How do you maintain a relationship with someone who's stabbed you in the back? How do you trust someone who's shown they'll sacrifice your well-being for someone else's without even consulting you? 3 months after the will reading, Mom called me crying. "Grace, I can't stand this distance between us. We need to talk." I drove to her house, hoping maybe she'd found a way to fix things. Maybe she'd talked to Rebecca about sharing the inheritance. Maybe she'd realized what she'd done was wrong. Instead, she tried to justify it all over again. "I was thinking about the bigger picture," she said. "Rebecca's children are so young, they have their whole lives ahead of them. And what about my life? What about the children David and I want to have? You're stable. You have each other. You'll figure something out." That's when it hit me. She'd never seen me as needing protection or support the way she saw Rebecca. Maybe because I'd always been independent, always figured things out on my own. Maybe because I'd never called her crying about money troubles like Rebecca did. But that wasn't my fault. I'd been responsible with money, worked hard, planned for my future. I'd been the one caring for Grandma Rose. Not because I expected payment, but because I loved her. And somehow, that had worked against me. "You chose her over me," I said quietly. "That's not what this was about." "Yes, it was. You had to choose who deserved Grandma's money more, and you chose Rebecca. You decided her struggles mattered more than mine." Mom started crying then, but I felt nothing. I was all cried out about this situation. I'd spent months crying about it, actually. Crying in my car after work. crying in the shower where David couldn't hear me, crying when I drove past the house I thought would be mine someday. I just wanted to help, she whispered. You wanted to help, Rebecca. You never thought about helping me. That's not true. I've always helped you. When? When have you ever helped me? I've been taking care of myself since I was 12 years old. When Dad died, you were so lost in your own grief that I had to figure out how to do my own laundry and make my own meals and get myself to school. I've been independent my whole life because I had to be, not because I wanted to be. She looked shocked, like she'd never considered that my independence might have been born out of necessity rather than choice. Grace, I did the best I could. Maybe. But your best for me was teaching me to be strong enough to survive on my own. Your best for Rebecca was making sure she'd never have to. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't keep letting this eat me alive. I couldn't keep hoping for some miraculous change of heart from Rebecca or some magical way to undo what had been done. The inheritance was gone. The house was gone. The future I'd planned was gone. But I wasn't gone. I realized I'd been so focused on what I'd lost that I'd forgotten what I still had. I had David, who loved me regardless of how much money was in my bank account. I had my job, which I was good at and which provided steady income. I had my health, my friends, my own two hands that could work toward building a different kind of future. Most importantly, I realized I'd been raised by a woman who taught me to be strong and independent, even if she'd failed me in this one crucial moment. Grandma Rose had given me more than money over the years. She'd given me her work ethic, her sense of humor, her recipes, her stories, her love. Those things were worth more than the house, and Rebecca couldn't take them away from me. I also realized something else. My mother's betrayal had shown me exactly who she was when the stakes were high. She was someone who would sacrifice my well-being for someone else's. Someone who would go behind my back instead of having honest conversations. Someone who would manipulate an elderly woman with dementia to get what she wanted for her golden child niece. That was painful to accept, but it was also freeing. I stopped expecting her to be someone she wasn't. I stopped hoping she'd suddenly develop the maternal instincts she'd never really had for me. I stopped waiting for an apology that was never going to come. But the story doesn't end there. 6 months later, Rebecca called me herself. She was crying, which was unusual for her. She usually only called when she wanted something, and she was always composed about it. Grace, I need to tell you something, she said, about the inheritance. My heart started racing. Maybe she'd had a change of heart. Maybe she'd realized what she'd done was wrong. I sold the house, she said. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. You what? I sold it to developers. They're tearing it down to build condominiums. The thought of that beautiful old Victorian being destroyed made me physically sick. Grandma Rose had lived in that house for 40 years. My grandfather had proposed to her on the front porch. I'd spent countless summers there, learning to bake in her kitchen, reading in the window seat, playing in the garden she'd tended so carefully. How could you do that? I whispered. I needed the money quickly. The kids' school tuition went up, and I have some credit card debt. The developers offered cash, and I couldn't wait for a regular buyer. Of course she couldn't. Rebecca had never been able to wait for anything. She'd always wanted immediate gratification, immediate solutions to her problems. Grace, are you there? I'm here. I know you're probably upset, but I want you to know I used some of the money to set up college funds for Emma and Jake. Grandma Rose would have wanted that. Would she? Would Grandma Rose have wanted her beloved house torn down so Rebecca could pay off credit card debt and put money away for children who barely knew their great-grandmother existed? Would she have wanted the garden she'd spent decades cultivating to be paved over for luxury condos? I didn't think so. But it didn't matter what I thought anymore. "Rebecca," I said, "I need you to never call me again." "What?" "You heard me. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't send Christmas cards. We're not family anymore." "Grace, that's crazy. We'll always be family." "No, we won't. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't destroy the things that mattered to the people they're supposed to love." I hung up and blocked her number. But the hardest conversation was still coming. I had to tell my mother what Rebecca had done with the house. I called her that evening, and she answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting by the phone. "Grace, is everything okay?" "Rebecca sold Grandma's house to developers. They're tearing it down." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long, I thought maybe we'd been disconnected. "Mom?" "I'm here." Her voice sounded hollow. "She told me she was going to keep it in the family." "Well, she lied, just like you lied to me about why you changed Grandma's will." "Grace, please don't start this again." "I'm not starting anything. I'm ending it. I'm ending all of this." "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm done. I'm done with you. I'm done with Rebecca. I'm done with this whole toxic family dynamic where everyone lies to each other and makes decisions behind each other's backs." "You can't mean that." "I absolutely mean it. You want to know the truth, Mom?" "The truth is that you never saw me as your daughter. You saw me as your insurance policy, the responsible one who would always be fine, who would always figure things out, who would never need help or support or protection. You saw Rebecca as someone fragile who needed to be rescued. Well, congratulations. You rescued her, and you sacrificed me to do it. That's not... It is fair. It's completely fair. You made a choice. You chose to manipulate an elderly woman with dementia into changing her will so your precious niece could have money she didn't earn and didn't deserve. You chose to betray your own daughter's trust. You chose Rebecca over me. So now I'm choosing myself over all of you. The last time I spoke to my mother was 6 months ago, and it was that conversation. She tried calling a few times after that, but I let them go to voicemail. She tried showing up at my house once, but I didn't answer the door. Eventually, she stopped trying. I know she tells people I'm being unreasonable. I know she probably paints herself as the victim in this story, the poor mother whose ungrateful daughter won't forgive a simple mistake. But I also know the truth, and that's enough for me. David and I bought a different house 2 months ago. It's smaller than the one we originally wanted, and we'll be paying the mortgage for 30 years instead of getting a head start with inheritance money. But it's ours. We earned it together, and nobody can take it away from us with a revised will or a family betrayal. I planted a rose garden in the backyard. Not because it reminds me of Grandma Rose, but because I like roses. Because they're beautiful and resilient, and they bloom again every year, no matter what tries to destroy them. Sometimes I wonder if my mother ever thinks about what she cost me. Not just the money, but the relationship we might have had if she'd been honest with me from the beginning. If she'd asked me how I felt about changing Grandma's will instead of going behind my back. If she'd considered that maybe, just maybe, the granddaughter who devoted years to caring for an elderly woman deserved some consideration too. But I don't wonder about it for long. I've learned that some people will always choose others over you, no matter how much you've sacrificed for them. Some people will always see your strength as a reason to give your share to someone else. Some people will always prioritize the child who calls crying over the child who handles things quietly. I've also learned that being the strong one doesn't mean you have to be the one who gets less. It doesn't mean you have to accept betrayal with grace. It doesn't mean you have to forgive people who've shown you exactly who they are when it matters most. The secret I've been carrying isn't really about the inheritance. It's about realizing that my own mother never saw me as someone worth protecting. She saw me as someone strong enough to handle being betrayed, and maybe she was right. Maybe I am that strong. But being strong enough to survive someone's betrayal doesn't mean you have to keep letting them into your life to do it again. And that's the part of this story that took me the longest to learn. 3 weeks ago, I found out I'm pregnant. David and I cried happy tears when we saw the positive test. We're going to be parents, and we're going to do it in our own house that we bought with our own money. We're going to raise our child to be strong, but also to know they're worth protecting. We're going to teach them that love isn't conditional on being the easy child or the difficult child, the strong one or the weak one. I haven't told my mother about the pregnancy, and I don't plan to. This baby will never know the grandmother who chose someone else's children over her own daughter. This baby will never have to wonder if they're the favorite or the forgotten one. Some people might think that's cruel. Some people might think I should forgive and forget and move on for the sake of family harmony. But those people don't understand what it's like to discover that the person who was supposed to love you most in the world was willing to sacrifice your future for someone else's present. The inheritance is gone. The house is gone. The mother I thought I had is gone. But I'm still here, and I'm building something better from what's left. Something that can't be stolen or given away or torn down by people who don't understand its value. That's the secret I've been carrying. And now that I've finally said it out loud, I feel free.